For years, I have been a huge fan of today's guest. I honestly wished he could have been my elementary art teacher. Don writes a regular column for Arts and Activities magazine and on his blog, Brite Zamorano, where he shares his students' projects. I love how he masterfully infuses contemporary art into his school and community in exciting and relevant ways. This is Cindy Ingram, and welcome to the Art Class Curator podcast, where we're taking art out of the dark with thoughtful explorations and in-depth interviews designed to ignite curiosity and delight in art classrooms everywhere. I am so excited to welcome Don Masse to the podcast. Welcome, Don.
Hello.
I'm so excited that you're here. I think I might be your biggest fan. I'm not sure. You probably have a lot of big fans, but I'm definitely one of them. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and what's going on with you and your background, and as well as tell us about your blog.
Well, where to start? So I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia and was always interested in art. Went to undergraduate in Philadelphia and then went down to Louisiana for my master's studies. And down there, I was a TA, so I taught a couple classes. And I have to admit, frankly, that I'm sure I was pretty terrible at it. I just had no way, or I had no training or anything like that, no student teaching, no kind of like education background as far as like how to structure things. So I did that poorly for a couple of years. And then I taught at a creative arts camp 3 summers in a row up in Connecticut. It's called Bucks Rock Creative Arts Camp. And it really brought about a passion in working with children for the first time. I think when I was doing master's work, it's like, oh, I'll do college, I'll be a professor, yada, yada, yada. But with that experience, it was like, oh, young kids are really amazing. The energy level, enthusiasm, the openness to new ideas. And the way the camp was structured, it was really loose. It was pretty much student directed, which was pretty awesome. And we just helped facilitate what they wanted to do. And then I met my wife, Carrie, and we moved out to San Diego and adjuncted at a few places and kind of got an artist in residence at Zamorano, where I am now, and was just kind of like piecing together stuff. And then Carrie and I sat down for a breakfast one day, and she's like, "What's your plan? What are we going to do?" I was like, I think I'm going to go back to school and get my credential. And did that and, got some education background. And, at the same time, I was teaching at the school, not like certified teacher, but kind of working my way in, familiar with, the structure of things, and went through the credential program and was able to slide in at Zamorano, and I've been there ever since. Yeah, it was really fortunate the way that things worked out. I've been there since like 2001, and I love it, and I can't really imagine being anywhere else. And I know as like an art instructor, especially at the elementary level, I'm really, really fortunate to have the stability for as long as I have.
Yeah, you really do, because what campus you're on can make or break your art teaching career. Because I'm not teaching now because I'm doing the website, but I almost, after my first school, just stopped altogether. I was training to be a computer programmer. I was like, I can't do this. But it was the campus. People were telling me like, it's not the teaching, it's where you are at. It makes such a huge difference.
Yeah, so. I was having a discussion just last week with another teacher, and she was talking about it, how she bounced around from school to school. And it's like you said, you're dealing with like the personality of the school, not necessarily teaching.
The workers and all that stuff, it all makes a big impact.
Yeah. And so the second part of that was the blog.
Yeah. I gave you this very long question. Tell me everything about your life. Yes. When did you start blogging and why?
Oh my gosh. So I can't remember. I think it's like 2010, started doing it. And at that time, when I originally started at Zamorano, I didn't necessarily have a contemporary focus. It was kind of tapping into, the standard art history, Impressionism, things like that, incorporating that in. And then I started to use the internet for research, and it opened up a whole new can of worms for me in a really good way. And I found some contemporary art, and I found this one blogger, actually, she went by the name Dear Ada at, what is it, Typepad? Was that a blog format, Typepad? I can't remember.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, and she posted several contemporary artists like daily. And I really kind of like fell in love with that. It was like, oh, I'm going to start incorporating, these people into my curriculum, and started to do that. And then as I kind of built up my curriculum some more, again, my wife, Carrie, was like, you should write about this. Like, you know what? I think you're right.
That Carrie,
right?
she's really got,
right?
she's got it together.
Right? She is amazing. And we're a wonderful team. And I started to do it. And I'm not really a writer by any stretch. But, just started to document the lessons, the process and everything. And it just kind of took off from there.
Yeah.
And
well, I love it because, you're introducing everybody to art that we've never seen before. You're showing how to teach it. You're creating projects that are meaningful for the students and relevant for the students. And you say you're not a writer, but like your blog posts are so easy to follow. I've done some of your lessons and I could just print out the blog post and that's all I needed. Like they were so, I don't know, the way you break it all down, you're doing a good job over there. I love it.
Well, the appreciation is mutual, my friend.
Thank you.
But, part of that too, the way that I think originally how I just kind of wrote it, I think it was still think it's very straightforward. Like you're saying, you could kind of follow it and do it. Mm-hmm. But part of that is for me, then it provides myself a lesson plan later on. If I need to revisit, I can access it and I have the visual information. If I have a sub or anything, it's just like, here you go.
Yeah.
So it's, I can communicate, share it with our district and our stakeholders, so they can see what we're doing. But then it's meaningful for teachers and myself. It's a great reflection tool for myself, So, I mean, when you blog and you write about it, whether it's, blogging or writing for a magazine, they're really great reflection opportunities for you, take advantage of that.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, it sounds like the benefits of writing are so multi-layered. It's benefiting you, your students, obviously, because you're a more reflective and organized teacher and more passionate teacher, I think, because you're being more intentional. It's benefiting your community because they're seeing what you're doing and they're involved. And yeah, that's fantastic. I love it. So do you include non-contemporary artists as well, or is it 100% contemporary? I
think I do. I'm trying to think I think every once in a while I may do a lesson inspired by somebody who's not current. But, I don't discount art history. I mean, I think it's definitely important for our students to be aware of. So if I'm doing a lesson on, like contemporary abstraction, I can link it back to Picasso or African art or, the origins of it. So, students can see that, this work isn't made in a vacuum, that forms, have preceded it. And, the artists now are, taking advantage of the steps that were taken before.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You can't study the present without knowing what happened before too. So that's great. I've been branching out to contemporary art more and more too, because it wasn't in my education. I think I had to take one contemporary art class in college and I was so stupid. I took Russian contemporary art as my one contemporary art class. And I'm like, it was really fascinating. But I should have taken the general contemporary art session, which covered it in more detail. And, but I do know a pretty good amount about Russian art history. But
well, there you go. There you go.
I don't know. I use that all the time, but yeah.
And I think for myself too, I'm fortunate that I can kind of focus my curriculum that way because at my site, we have another full-time art teacher plus an artist in residence and another photo person. And so we kind of all cover the basis and we can kind of, hone in on, what our interests are, what our passions are, so we're each a little bit more specialized,
And so each student gets to take classes from all of you?
Yes, that's correct.
That's awesome. Yeah. Because I think so much, an art teacher really is about like what they're passionate about. And if you're teaching about what you're most passionate about, then your teaching is going to be the best teaching it can be. So I love that with art, we have that freedom.
Right. Exactly.
To do that. So you usually create your lessons based off of artists. And you said you do a lot of internet research for that. Are there any good resources that you like to find where you find artists?
For a while there, I really read a lot of, Colossal or This is Colossal. It's a blog and that's gotten really big. I haven't really paid much attention to it recently, but that was a big draw for me. There was a website blog called Boom. I don't know how many O's are in it, but it was like an elongated boom. But then honestly, lately it's like if if I want to tap into a particular demographic or a particular kind of medium, it'll be kind of just like a Google search, pretty general. And then, see what pops up, and then I'll investigate it further. Instagram is a wonderful visual tool, and I've been relying on that a lot more. If I find somebody on Google, if they're active on social media, being able to tap into that, follow these people.
Yeah.
And then like other art educators, it seems like now more so than when I started focusing on contemporary art, there's a lot more people that are doing it. And so my peers, all these people from around the country and around the world are, providing all these great contemporary resources too.
Yeah.
It's out there. It's all over.
Yeah, I love that because, like I said, when I was in college, I take the regular contemporary art class, but that was also in 1999 to 2002. So we didn't have the internet as well as we do now.
Right.
And so now it's just amazing what we can find. Just a regular kind of everyday person artist just making stuff and putting it online and people writing lessons about it. I think that's so cool.
Yeah. And then,
so do you reach out to the artists usually?
I definitely do. Usually after the fact, once I've written a post or since I've been delinquent about that lately, through Instagram or Twitter, things like that, Facebook, reaching out and, kind of explain a little bit about the process and, encourage them to check out what the students did. And then so many of the artists have been so positive about it and, so receptive to what the students are doing. Oftentimes they'll write back to the kids or a note to me that I can share with them, or they'll, comment on the blog or share stuff on Instagram. And then they oftentimes do share it with their readers and their followers. And so it's
awesome.
It's publishing opportunities built in for my students.
Their
artwork is used by people all around the world.
Oh, I love that. I've only reached out to one artist and I loved the experience just because, not when I was teaching, just for the website. And she was just so excited that there was two. There's another one. They were both just really excited that I was interested in their art, and they were so excited that teachers were going to get to see it. So I think artists are very receptive to that.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting too, kind of going back to that, kind of research question, even like a lot of the San Diego artists that I've started to tap into, I haven't found them like directly, out in the city. It's been through, internet searches first or, social, and then we kind of make that connection. So that's interesting. For me, it's kind of like, I feel like I should be out there more in the San Diego art scene, actually seeing all these people, but instead, the internet allows me to kind of do it this way too.
Yeah. Do you have local artists come into your classroom too that you've worked with?
Yeah, we've had several in the past couple of years since I've kind of slanted things, a little bit more intentionally that way. Tapping into the local art scene. We had an artist come out, Santos Orellana, last year after a couple grade levels did project inspired by his work. He came out and created this, it's like 120-foot mural on our campus. We had fifth graders got to help, and then it was like a gallery walk every day. Classes would come by, get to see the process. He was really open to discussions with the teachers and the students, answering questions and things like that. I had another artist, Gloria Muriel, come out this year. My third graders did kind of like a portrait project inspired by her work and another artist. And she came out, brought in some paintings and some drawings to a select number of students and did kind of like a draw along activity. And then we had Monty Montgomery come out this year and just recently did another mural for us. So yeah, they're the local artists, really enjoy coming out. It was interesting because I was talking to Gloria about it after she came out. She's like, well, we could come and, she's willing to do a mural too. I was like, yeah, but I don't have the funds to, give you what you're worth. And she's like, it's like community service, and I don't think you necessarily find that in, different career paths, but I think artists in general are open to that, willing to kind of give back. We're suckers in a way.
Yeah, it was like there's a lot of debate about this because you don't want to work for free, but you're approaching it not in a way where you're asking her. You're not going straight to her and saying, "Hey, Gloria, can you create a free mural for us?" It's started with the relationship first.
Exactly. It's that interesting, relationship between client and artist that we all kind of have to deal with. But I totally hear what you're saying. And
too, I was thinking artists too, they're going to create art no matter what. So it's like, I can create art at my house or I can create art on the wall of your school. It's still, they're going to do it even no matter what, because artists are just wired to do that.
Like Monty was like, look, I want to work on a wall. Let's do it. If I'm itching to do like a large scale work, like, all right, well, let's make it happen.
That's awesome. I love that. So it's hard, I think, for some people, and even me, sometimes creating projects that are based off of an artist's work or an art movement or anything, and still have the artworks end up being unique and personal to the student, and it's not sort of all copies of the same thing. Do you have any tips on how to do this effectively?
Oh, well, for me, it's like it's honoring the artist and honoring like the student individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically what I'll do is, we don't necessarily look at like one work of art. We'll look at several, from them, so that the students can kind of see continuity in the artist's, methods or subjects or themes, but they can also see how like one piece is different from another too. They can see the, the variety inherent in like kind of like a sequence of work.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so we'll kind of talk about, those things. And then it's, we're not going to copy the piece, but I'll give the student certain constraints that they kind of need to include in the work
Mm-hmm.
of art. But then they've also got like student choice built in. They can incorporate, things that are interesting to them. So it's kind of like finding that balance between, all right, well, we do need to, address these standards, or learning objectives, but we also want to have, your student voice, recognized and honored too, and developed, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like striking that balance between the two.
Yeah.
Is that kind of that question?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's sort of this abstract thing. It's hard to pin down. And every artist, I think the answer would be different for every single artist, because some artists are more about the meaning or the message, and other ones are more about the form. So it really kind of depends on the type of artist.
Right.
Too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I think it's important too to give them those parameters and those constraints, because then you're still teaching them, the basis of art, the composition, and the, how to create meaning and how to make it look nice and that sort of stuff at the same time. And they're not just going free with it. So I like that you provide that. But it's a challenge, and I think it's one I don't know that I ever really mastered, but I certainly gave it my best bet.
I think I've gotten a lot better at it. I think especially at the beginning of my teaching career, it wasn't like that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then, kind of starting with like the NAEA conference in like San Diego, and kind of networking and seeing how like other art teachers are approaching things and incorporating choice. It's like, I'm not, like a tab teacher or total student choice, but I can see where I can include it. And then I feel like it's made, the learning experience for my students so much more rich, because they can, connect much more with the content when they've got, choices, that they can bring in.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up really connecting with other art educators, because we can feel pretty alone at times. I know you have several on your campus, but a lot of people there, it's just them. And so reaching out, going to conferences, getting on Facebook, there's so many Facebook groups that you can explore and find your tribe of people.
Yeah, I think that's huge for an art educator, especially because like you said, like most of us are isolated. You're the only one or two on campus. And even if you have a great relationship with who you work with, I mean, there's so many ideas out there that you can glean from now.
Yeah.
It's something you should take advantage of.
Yeah. Not only understanding or getting lesson ideas, but also like feeling understood and feeling known as in your sort of struggles and in your curriculum. So I think it's great. So I noticed on your blog that you incorporate some student reflection into your lessons. How do you incorporate writing and reflection in a lesson?
Well, I would say it's both during the creative process and after. It's something that I want to encourage my students. I want to start to, even at a young age, give them opportunities to really like talk about what they're doing. Mm-hmm. My classroom isn't really writing, but it's the reflecting part. Just my classroom isn't quiet by any means. But a lot of the time, I don't mind that, because they're talking about content. But giving them moments where, if they're doing like multiple sketches, for a project, and it's like, all right, I want you to think about, before you move on, which one of you like more and why. And not just because I like this because it's good or I like it because it's awesome, but what's the reasoning behind that? Mm-hmm. So starting to get them to kind of reflect on that a little bit at the beginning, and then, turning to a partner and, sharing those thoughts, so they're actually verbalizing these ideas too. And they're listening to their partner too. kind of developing those speaking and listening skills right off the bat. And then I do a lot of end of project written reflections too, just as a more formal way to kind of get those thoughts down on paper. You've done the project, what do you think about it? I really emphasize and the why. I want a because statement. I want you to, think about that. And I know they're elementary school students, but I think it's really important to foster now, because when they get to middle school and high school, they'll at least have a sense of that, when they take art classes or other, classes in their curriculum.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And it's such a great foundation to give them, because a lot of times a kid will have an art class or an art project, and they don't really know. They're just doing it because the teacher told them that's what we're doing, and they don't really think about, well, why are we doing this to begin with? So I love that you're fostering that right away. Yeah, my daughter, it's a whole thing, but they don't have elementary art teachers in my district that we live in. Well, they have aides be the art teachers. So they're not trained art teachers. And so she comes home with just the strangest things. And I should probably not say that. Some people know where I live. Well, you know what? I'm going to say it anyway, because they need to make a change. So I should be more vocal about it. But anyway, you need to be making your choices for a reason. You need to be creating your lessons because they're going to learn something, and they're going to have some sort of personal development, or they're going to make some sort of artistic choice. So you don't just throw things at them and say, look, we're just doing this. You need to be intentional.
Right. So, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. So that reflection piece, I think, is great. And so do you have like a standard template that you use for the writing, or is it unique to the project?
No, I'd say it's unique to the project. I mean, it's usually just like 2 or 3 questions, that respond, to more specifically to what's going on in that project. Or it may be comparing and contrasting, because I see them in like 2-week rotations where I'll have like 1st and 4th grade for 2 weeks, and then I see K3 for 2 weeks, and then 2nd and 5th. So it may be, out of the, which one of the 2 projects was more successful, and kind of like having them think not just about, one piece of art, but the process, over the course of a couple weeks too.
Awesome. So can you tell us about like 1 or 2 of your lessons that you have found to be particularly successful? Some of your favorites?
What do you want to know?
Like kind of what you did and what you talked about, and just the kind of general process of the lesson and what you made, the artist.
It's interesting because I don't necessarily repeat a whole lot of projects either. I'd say like 85% of my curriculum is like new year to year. So when we look at it all together, it's like bright and fresh and new, and it keeps me engaged too. But I have done this project a couple years in a row with a digital art project inspired by these murals by Maya Hayat. And recently I wrote about it for Arts and Activities not too long ago. And basically kids team up. We've got photographs of different walls of the Zamorano campus, and they use this app called Assembly, and they work together to create, just using geometric shapes, a mural on this photograph of a wall. That's and they cool. Can create anything they want, and her work is very abstract, but we talk about kind of, you need to include overlapping, you need to include geometric shape, and you may or may not have symmetry. And we kind of look at that in her work too, how it's present in some. But really so when they start working on it, I mean, it's wide open for them. Some groups take it in a much more figurative way. Some kids go, all in with the abstraction element. Some kids are working, like with very closely knit kind of color families. And, you've got other people, really exploring a wide range of colors. And the results for that have just been striking. And anytime really I do an iPad project with the kids, they're all in. Like engagement, it's what they know. And that's a whole nother thing. It's like people that are, kind of nervous about technology in the classroom. It's like, just go for it. So that's one project. And really, I do a lot of relief printmaking with my students, K through 5. And we've looked at a variety of artists. So it's not necessarily one particular artist-inspired project, but anytime I do relief printing with the kids, no matter how many times we've done it, just kind of like the magic of like the print reveal. Like they're always like, oh my goodness, that's so amazing.
Like even me when I do it, I'm like, it's really exciting.
I love it. I mean, that was my emphasis in undergrad and grad. And it still relates to me, that reveal. Mr. Masse, is this when the magic happens? This is when the magic happens. You know, and we do like multicolor, you know, so we do some with kind of like water soluble ink, but a lot of the stuff I do is using water soluble markers so they can add more colors to it at once.
Oh, fun.
And yeah, so it's always a big hit, you know, K through 5. A couple of years ago, I did this clay tile project inspired by the artist Invader. You know, he goes around to all these cities, you know, puts these clay tile kind of mosaics up. And they originally started just as Space Invaders. Now they're all sorts of different things. So we looked at that, and then the kids had play like 6x6 tiles, and then we used Legos to kind of create the design in the clay itself, where they press the Legos to kind of create the mosaic pattern.
Oh, fun! I bet
that was a lot.
That.
Yeah, that was really a lot of fun. High engagement too. What else? I really enjoy doing chalk pastel drawings with my students too. Just that I'm a dirty kind of guy. I love using chalks myself.
Yeah.
And again, it's like being, you know, exploring what you're passionate in, and if you bring that enthusiasm, kids are going to be passionate about it too. They're going to be engaged. But I just love the effects that you can get with pastels and like laying oil pastels over top of them. This year we looked at like the San Diego photographer, Aaron Chang, and he does like a lot of sunset photos at the beach and everything. So everything's backlit. So we did some Zamorano sunrise or sunset pictures. And I went around and took different shots of like playground equipment early in the morning. So they had kind of resources to look at. So they kind of created their sunsets in chalk, and then, you know, chose, you know, playground elements to kind of layer over top of it. And just a lot of student success with that project, and a lot of kind of interesting approaches to what they decided to include, what they decided to exclude.
Yeah, as I'm listening to you talk about your lessons, I love it because it's very structured in a way that, you know, you're providing these very structured lessons, but it's also unstructured and it's all relevant. So it's like you're teaching the art content in just really relevant, great ways.
You know, looking for hooks, right? Looking for authentic hooks, whether it's digital technology or it's like playground materials, you know, chalks and stuff, or, you know, it's tapping into pop culture, the stuff that they see, right?
I love that.
Art
looking for hooks. That's really important. Like that's really, I think, a really good point you just made.
It's funny when you talk about organization, because you interviewed Nick Hahn.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
I did.
It's so funny because I think have really, you know, looked to each other as role models, I guess, in kind of art education, but we're kind of like polar opposites as far as organization and kind of like how we think things through. And I don't know, it's interesting. When you say organization, I immediately think of Nick Hahn, and I don't think of myself as organized at all.
I'm on the cusp between organized and not organized. Like, I have a project management software thing, and I have checklists for everything I do. Yeah. But if you look at my desk, I have like piles and piles of paper, and I have like 6,000 fidgets, and I have, you know, it's like my desk is just a tornado. But it's really, I'm kind of in the middle. I think I'm both at the same time. Do you have some good stuff to say about discussing artwork with your students, like what you say when you present a work of art?
Well, we talked about like sharing their ideas, but, you know, as far as like looking at a piece and how I approach it, like to kind of
like what do you say when you're,
I mean, some of it's based on like the VTS model, you know, kind of like broad, simple statements, you know, when you look at this, you know, what's going on? What do you see that makes you say that? What else can we find? Just kind of like digging a little bit into the art. And it's not necessarily using that terminology all the time, but, you know, giving them a time to kind of quietly look at a piece too, and then kind of opening instead of like jumping right in with discussion and questions. You know, I think that quiet time, which is really insanely tough for elementary students. Okay, you're going to sit here and look at for 30 whole seconds quietly. But I think that's important, giving them that, you know, that kind of quiet time. Even if it's that amount of time, you know, you think about, you know, you can kind of prolong that, but just giving them a taste, you know, where they can kind of experience it without saying anything. And then, you know, the discussions, you know, sometimes with the older students, you know, we'll look at some pieces and I'll have them work in small groups, compare and contrast, you know, kind of build up discussions that way. Of like a graphic organizer where they can kind of, you know, contribute, organize their thoughts, and then we'll share out. So I do it in a couple different ways. Yeah. But it's pretty loose.
Yeah, I love that. But I love that you're doing it because it's hard to fit that into elementary because the limited time you have with the students and elementary kids have a little bit less tolerance for spending an entire class period on doing stuff like that.
Oh, sure.
So,
right.
Yeah. I think they're good at it. They'll do it. They'll discuss artwork forever, but they know that this is their only time that they could be making. And I think that's just like this kind of weird struggle a lot of students and teachers have.
And that time is really valuable. I feel fortunate because I've got them my K3s I've got for an hour. Some people like Cassie Stevens has them for like 30 minutes. Or I know other elementary. How do you accomplish anything in 30 minutes? It's like set up, fiddle around, and then it's time to clean up. It's like I cannot imagine, those types of time constraints.
Yeah, the school I was at last year, the elementary was 30 minutes, and I just couldn't even. I subbed for her a couple times, like when she had to leave or something, and I was like, "We all just got here, we just started," and all of a sudden. So I guess having really rigid classroom management, the best way to do it. Not rigid, but very organized. You have to be.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, those are great tips, and I really love the embracing the silence piece. And I will even tell my students, I'll tell them, I'm going to stare at you awkwardly for, 3 minutes and we're going to do this and you're going to be fine. Yeah. And because that's when the ideas start to bubble, and giving them that space, especially the kids that are a little bit quieter, and that because I'm kind of that way. And that if you ask me to have a brainstorming session with you about some topic, I will fail miserably if I'm not prepared in advance, because I really need to think about it. So even just giving me 5 minutes, we need to think about those kids who are, just take a little bit longer to get their head wrapped around what they're doing. Awesome. So, okay, let's wrap up, because I think we're at a good stopping place. So tell us how teachers can connect with you online. We've already talked about your blog. Do you have a favorite? And then that's Brite Zamorano, and we'll link to that in the show notes. And what is the link to the blog? And also, is there a social media that you want to point us to?
Sure. So the link, to the blog, it's shinebritezamorano.com.
.com. Okay, because sometimes it's like .weebly. I don't know.
And Brite is spelled incorrectly.
Yes.
So people will put the GHT and you're not going to get it. Well, I guess you would, but yeah.
I always type ZAMA all the time instead of O.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a Zamorano. It's a tongue twister, and it's a tricky one to spell. But on Instagram, Brite Zamorano, I'm really active on that. So people can, direct message or comment.
Perfect. Okay. And you also write for Arts and Activities magazine. So,
yeah, I do.
And you have, how many articles have you written for them? Do you know the number? It's a lot.
Yeah, 4 or 5 a year. Generally, it's about 6 per year. So I've been doing it for this is my 3rd year. Originally, I had, just kind of submitted every once in a while. And then Mary Ellen reached out to me and, asked me if I'd like to be a contributing editor and, produce that regular series, the Alive and Kicking series. And it was like, yeah, let's do it. So that's nice, being able to reach out to a different audience.
Yeah,
I really
that's awesome.
enjoy that.
Exciting. Well, congratulations on all of your success. That is fantastic. Okay, so one question that I ask everybody, and that is, which artwork changed your life?
Okay, this may surprise you.
Okay.
It's not a piece of contemporary art.
Oh.
Yeah, right? It is specifically, I took a trip I studied abroad in Rome my junior year in undergrad, and we went to Ravenna and got to see San Vitale, and in particular, what right there too is the mausoleum of Galla Placidia. And you go into this small little mausoleum, kind of like the cross structure, really tiny building, and it's just mosaic everywhere.
Yeah.
And just the light in there is this one particular section of the ceiling, which is basically, it's kind of like the star-filled sky, this really intense blue, and then, the gold pieces in there and everything. And that was really the first time seeing those mosaics where pattern and decoration really spoke out to me. And I think in my personal work, that is still really relevant to me. I continue to kind of combine and play with pattern and decoration. It really moved me. It didn't really kind of register right away, but it's something that has really stuck with me since, I went there in 92, and wow. I think it resonates with me as strongly now as it did then, or even more so.
Well, I can see that. I've been to Ravenna. I don't know that I might have gone to that particular one, but I went to Ravenna, and I could see how that artwork that I've seen you post online of your own like your chalk drawings and stuff. And then the artwork that you choose to focus on for your lessons on your blog.
Yeah.
It's very pattern heavy and bold and bright. Like I can see how that kind of ties it all together. That's really interesting. I love that. So we will link to that in the show notes. So if people listening want to go and check it out, you can see some pictures of that space that changed Don's life. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today on our podcast. And thank you. You're awesome.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to chat. Really.
Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and give us an honest rating on iTunes. This will help other teachers find us and hear these amazing stories. Do you want even more art inspiration? Sign up for Art Class Curator's once a week email newsletter, Your Weekly Art Break. Teacher Sarah Warnock says, I truly do take a break from my busy week to check all your links and feel inspired. Everything you share is relevant, meaningful, and also super helpful. You definitely help me become a better art teacher, and I look forward to your emails each week. You can sign up at artclasscurator.com/artbreak. And as a free gift for subscribing, you'll get 6 free art interpretation worksheets to use in your classroom. Be sure to tune in next week for more inspiring art interviews. Thanks again to Don for contributing so much inspiration, motivation, and support to art teachers everywhere. Be sure to check out the show notes at artclasscurator.com/16 to learn more about Don's work and everything we talked about today. Next week, I talk with Kristen Wilcox, who has led 9 student groups on European excursions. She'll share her best tips for successful student trips and the importance of travel for both students and teachers. Keep listening to hear a preview of my interview with Kristen.